We hope you enjoy this audio-only podcast. You can watch the full video versions on our YouTube channel at All Things Unexplained. There we share visuals, documents, and extended discussions you won't hear anywhere else. While you're there, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new video. Plus, if you subscribe and comment on a video, that will enter you into our giveaways. But for now, enjoy this audio version of All Things Unexplained. All right, Unexplained ones, it's Dr. Mounts, and welcome back to All Things Unexplained. We have got a U.S. politician talking about a secret meeting between President Eisenhower and alien beings. But before we get into that, I want to tell you about something very exciting. You hear him at the beginning and end of every episode, and now the All Things Unexplained universe is crossing paths even more with the Mr. Beast universe. So first, I was in Beast Games Season 1. I have the link to episode 0 of that, which is on Mr. Beast's YouTube channel in the show descriptions. And now, our very own voiceover man, Larry, who you hear in our intro and outro every episode, is in the latest Mr. Beast video. You can find the link to that in the show description, or it's on the Mr. Beast YouTube channel. Look for his latest video. It's called Ages 0 to 100. Compete for $250,000. He's number 76. Go cheer on Larry from All Things Unexplained on the latest Mr. Beast video. I also want to remind you before we get started, be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already and post a comment. Plus, that will automatically make you eligible for our giveaways, which we'll get into at the end of the show. And if you want to grab a hat like mine, just check out our swag. You can go to unexplainedswag.com or click the link in the show description. And now, number 76 on the latest Mr. Beast video. Here's Larry.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, will save for closed session.
So recently on the About Last Night podcast, Representative Eric Burleson from Missouri talked about a secret meeting between Ike and alien beings. He said physicist Eric Davis told him about this. And of course, Eric Davis is no stranger to All Things Unexplained. If you've been paying attention, you know that Eric Davis testified before a congressional briefing about alien beings at the Roswell incident. So let's listen to what Burleson had to say on ALN. And this clip comes from Red Panda Koala on X.
I mean, Eric Davis said that there's a video of aliens landing at an Air Force base. There's 3 UFOs that came in. I mean, I'm not telling you that this is the case. I'm saying this is what Eric Davis has said, that these 3 UFOs arrived. One of them actually came to the ground. It was prearranged that this was going to happen, so the American officials knew that this meeting was going to happen ahead of time. 2 of the vehicles, left. They didn't land. They just kind of accompanied the first. Then out came an individual who was strikingly human, but taller, with long hair, which fits within the description of the what they call the Nordic, and that being had a something in its hand that they thought was like a scepter or some kind of strange thing, but it turned out that it was a translating device. And then that being, I think if I remember right, he said that it was having to wear some kind of breathing apparatus in order to continue to breathe on this surface. And then it went into the hangar and had a meeting. And apparently that video existed at least at one point in time.
What era would this have been?
This would have been, I'm really bad at exact dates. I wish I had that kind of didactic memory, but I think it would have been the 50s or the 60s, right? So not too long after Roswell, this would have happened. So, and then conveniently the video is nowhere to be found or does not exist. And so,
okay, it's too bad that he doesn't recall the exact date that this was supposed to happen, because I feel like those sorts of facts are important. It really helps you pin down certain things about these stories. And wow, that's quite the story. It actually gives off major Star Trek vibes to me, talking about the translator, breathing apparatuses, and all these different things. Major Star Trek vibes. But it also reminded me of someone that we've talked quite a bit about on the show, and that is Art Campbell. And I want to say rest in peace, Art Campbell. He has passed away. But Art is the author of Finding the UFO Crash at San Agustin. Art Campbell spent years in the plains of San Agustin looking for pieces of UFO crash debris. This is the same site that was later made famous in the book American Cosmic by Diana Pasulka. Now, in that book, Pasulka claims that her and Dr. Gary Nolan from Stanford were taken out to this desert location by a man she describes as Tyler, which the general public pretty much believes that Tyler is a pseudonym for the real-life Tim Taylor. Tim Taylor being a former NASA employee. And of course, much of the description of Tyler in American Cosmic matches up with the real-life Tim Taylor, including these biotech patents that he got from experiments in outer space. Pasulka says that her and Nolan were blindfolded in New Mexico, in the desert, taken out to this crash site, and they were digging out there for UFO crash debris. This is the same site as Art Campbell had been digging in years before. And even before Campbell, there were others at the site, including expeditions funded by none other than Robert Bigelow, a former owner of Skinwalker Ranch and now a huge aerospace person. Robert Bigelow owns Budget Suites of America and is the founder of Bigelow Aerospace. What's interesting about that is that pretty much he was a motel guy. Robert Bigelow operated motels. And then all of a sudden he buys Skinwalker Ranch. He starts visiting places like the plains of San Agustin in New Mexico, where Art Campbell spent years digging for UFO crash debris, where Art Campbell found debris. And the next thing you know, Robert Bigelow ended up with Bigelow Aerospace. He goes from motels to being one of the biggest players in the aerospace industry. It's pretty hard to fathom and pretty difficult to explain. And very interesting that the in-between seems to be Skinwalker Ranch. Art Campbell even lamented at one time that he was kind of fed up with the UFO community because he had all this evidence, all this debris. He even believed that he had organs from aliens. He did send all these things off for samples. I'm not going to say much more about that right now, but I will tell you that on a future episode of All Things Unexplained, we're going to get into how myself and Arthur Lee Starks visited this same secretive site at the plains of San Agustin in New Mexico. With the help of some of our friends, we identified exactly where this site is, and we went out there for ourselves, and we found some things, and we can't wait to bring that to everybody on a video real soon. But amidst Art Campbell's research into the plains of San Agustin, one day he received a letter that told a shocking story about a meeting between Ike and alien beings at Holloman. Now, Art Campbell actually did some due diligence on this letter and established the background of the person that sent it, and they had more than one correspondence in regards to this. And Art Campbell finally came to the conclusion that this whistleblower was legitimate, and Art Campbell believed what he had to say. This is Campbell's version of what he said happened when President Dwight D. Eisenhower traveled to Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico in 1955. Again, this is a story he received from an ex-airman stationed at the base. Like I said, it's too bad Burleson didn't remember a date. The story began on February 9th, 1955. On that day, President Eisenhower was publicly announced to be traveling to Thomasville, Georgia for a quail hunt. This is in the public record. And I will say what makes this very interesting is that the whereabouts of presidents are pretty meticulously tracked. And I want to encourage everybody out there, don't just take my word for it. Don't take Art Campbell's word for it. You can do your own research here with this, and you can start digging in to the whereabouts of Ike at this time. And what you're going to find is the typical UFO rabbit hole situation happening. Because when you start researching this, it gets really interesting. The next day, on February 10th, 1955, Eisenhower departs Andrews Air Force Base around 1 p.m. with a chartered press contingent. Later that day, around 4:30 p.m., Eisenhower and a party arrive in Thomasville and begin what is described as hunting quail or a hunting retreat. Once again, there's local newspaper accounts of this happening. Just a quick Google search and you'll find that Eisenhower was a frequent visitor to the Thomasville, Georgia area for quail hunting, particularly in the 50s, where he often stayed at Secretary of Treasury George M. Humphrey's Milestone Plantation and hunted at the historic Pebble Hill Plantation, often toting around a gun and his limit of quail. You can find a New York Times article from the time, dated February 11th, 1955, headline, President shoots 2 quail in Georgia, takes to field on Humphrey Plantation after flight from Washington. So again, confirmed facts here. According to the Holloman Airman's letter to Campbell, Ike disappeared from public press view for about 36 hours. It was during this time that journalists following him were told by Press Secretary James Haggerty that the president and his valet are treating a case of the sniffles. Campbell's source claims that on the morning of February 11th, 1955, Ike's Air Force One, which was then the Columbine 3, secretly landed at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico at about 9 a.m. The plane taxied to a designated spot on an active runway by prior arrangement. At that point, the letter says something dramatic occurred, and it does sound very similar to the story that Burleson relayed. A UFO landed on the runway in front of Air Force One. A second UFO hovered nearby over the flight line. A figure presumed to be President Eisenhower exited his plane, walked toward the saucer, and entered it for approximately 45 minutes. Meanwhile, the second craft remained visible over the base while this meeting took place. Campbell's source listed 8 named witnesses who saw aspects of this event, including Air Force personnel on the tarmac, medical staff at the base hospital, civilian workers in hangars and at base facilities. The letter claims hundreds of personnel were present around the base that day. After the UFO encounter, the source said Eisenhower and the base commander spoke to large groups of military and civilian workers, once in a supply hangar and again in the base theater, where the president gave brief remarks before departing later that same afternoon. I have no doubt that this letter exists, that witnesses were named. I have come to believe that the majority of Art Campbell's collection has ended up in the possession of some very particular, specific people. And I have a pretty good idea about who they are. But getting back to the letter, it claims that radar was shut down at the base during this period by orders from, quote, higher up, and that maintenance on base lights was needed later in the day. So an interesting electric disturbance maybe here. It also recounts remarks from personnel who were present. One airman recalled that early observers initially assumed the saucer was a secret U.S. aircraft, until the shape later became widely known as a UFO in public culture. A lieutenant colonel reportedly told others that Eisenhower had addressed around 225 base people, telling them that security was paramount during his visit. In the version Campbell circulated, base workers were told that what you see here stays here. Meanwhile, according to Campbell's source, when Eisenhower returned to Thomasville after the alleged Holloman visit, there was no indication in the press that he had ever left the hunt. Journalists were unaware of any of these events while they were told he was sick in his cottage. Campbell noted that this secrecy was likely intentional, so that no questions would be asked of the president either while he was out of public view or afterward. Let's recap what Art Campbell was told by this letter from an airman that he verified the identity of. According to the account delivered to Campbell, Eisenhower landed at Holloman Air Force Base on February 11th, 1955. A UFO landed directly in front of Air Force One. Eisenhower walked to the craft and had a meeting of about 45 minutes with its occupants. Another UFO was seen hovering nearby during this entire period. Eisenhower and the base commander spoke to hundreds of personnel that afternoon, and the public was never informed of the real events, only the press secretary's explanation of illness. This is Art Campbell's detailed telling of the Eisenhower at Holloman events, based on what he documented from the ex-airman's handwritten account and testimony decades after the fact. Now, I do want to point out that there are other accounts of Eisenhower meeting with aliens in the lore, which is some slightly different details. For example, there is an account about President Eisenhower, a dental emergency, and a potential alien cover-up from retiredteachers.org. It says that in early 1954, Eisenhower departed from Washington, D.C. for a golf trip in Palm Springs, California. And by the way, before you think that, oh, this is just some random website that talks about another Ike alien meeting, you can find other sources about this situation, like here in the Mercury News, an article titled, "Why Did President Eisenhower Disappear During Palm Springs Visit?" Rumors included his death from a heart attack or that he met aliens in their spaceship. This is said to have happened in February of 1954. I find it interesting that Campbell's source told him that it happened in February 1955. It's very interesting. But back to the retired teachers site, it says that on the night of the 20th, Ike chipped the porcelain cap of his upper left central incisor while eating a chicken wing at dinner. He then boarded Air Force One and took an overnight trip to see his dentist to have it repaired. The next morning, Ike was back in L.A. and soon attending a church service. At least that's the official story. But of course, some people believe that the dentist story was just a cover to cover up something far stranger and weirder, like Ike meeting with aliens. And as retired teachers tell it, that night, instead of a dental emergency, Eisenhower made a secret nighttime trip to a nearby Air Force base to meet 2 extraterrestrial aliens. Flipping back over to the Mercury News, they say that on the evening of February 20th, Eisenhower seemingly disappeared and rumors began circulating that he had died of a heart attack. The Associated Press even reported the president had died, but retracted the story a few minutes later. There's even a story from 2004 in the Washington Post about Ike and the alien ambassadors. They cheekily say the whole truth about the president's extraterrestrial encounter. All right, I'm going to flip back to retiredteachers.org. Ike went to Edwards Air Force Base, where he met with 2 aliens, get this, nicknamed Nordics, because of their resemblance to Scandinavian humans with their white hair, pale blue eyes, and colorless lips. I should point out this retiredteachers.org story was written November 1st, 2024. So here they are relaying about Ike's meeting with Nordics way before Burleson relayed on this podcast that physicist Eric Davis told him about Ike meeting with Nordics. Again, it's why it would have been very interesting if Burleson had relayed an exact date here. And I can't help but wonder if there was a reason that Burleson didn't relay the date. Or if there was a reason that Davis didn't relay a date to Burleson. Because here's the thing, the movements of presidents are so well tracked that if we did know the exact date of the story that is being portrayed here by Davis or by Burleson, then researchers would really be able to dig into this. But without a date, without just a little more detail, there's essentially nothing to dig into. Instead, we're left to ponder, was Davis just simply passing along lore? Later in the day, after Davis testified at the briefing, Hal Puthoff on the Joe Rogan show told a shocking story about Davis's own personal research and interviews with Roswell participants. According to my friend Paul Simonis with the UFO tours in Roswell, that had never been revealed before. The fact that Eric Davis did his own interviews with folks involved in the Roswell incident, which happened in 1947. That's when Paul and I speculated, hey, is Eric Davis even old enough to have actually interviewed these folks that Puthoff says that he interviewed? That's when I discovered something quite strange about Eric Davis, the only person that I can say about this. I tried to use AI to figure out how old Eric Davis is, and it's unknown. It's literally unknown how old Eric Davis is. Isn't that kind of weird? Google, how old is Eric Davis, the physicist? When was he born? You're not going to find out. There are no known public records of Eric Davis's birth date or age. Again, folks, the UFO rabbit hole, it's not something that we just make up. Okay, back to retired teachers here. The reason the Nordics traveled to Edwards from another solar system and engaged in telepathic communication with Eisenhower was to make a request. If Ike agreed to eliminate America's nuclear weapons, the Nordics would share their superior technology and their spiritual wisdom. Retired Teachers says Ike declined the deal because he did not want to give up the nukes. However, later that same year, Ike reportedly reached a deal with a different alien race. And of course, remember, Eric Davis talked about multiple alien races at that congressional briefing. Ike would allow the extraterrestrials to capture cattle and humans for medical experiments if they returned the humans safely home. Since then, some people claim that millions of humans have been kidnapped and many were never returned. I can't help but think about one of my favorite guests on All Things Unexplained, Travis Walton, who they made a movie about called Fire in the Sky that basically relayed his story. But Travis came on All Things Unexplained. I'll put a link to that in the show description, and told the real story about his alien abduction. And Travis went missing for quite a while. A huge manhunt was undertaken to find Travis Walton. His friends were given lie detector tests. They were about to be arrested for the murder of Travis Walton. Now, I will admit that part of me can't help but wonder, was this letter that was sent to Art Campbell, who had spent years doing legitimate field research at a UFO crash debris site in the plains of St. Augustine, a site written about by Diana Pasulka in American Cosmic, where she talks about being out there with Dr. Gary Nolan from Stanford, taken by someone she calls Tyler, who the general public believes is Tim Taylor. I mean, the description in the book matches the real-life Tim Taylor. The real-life Tim Taylor has these biotech patents. Diana Pasulka said that Tyler had memories from the phenomenon, from aliens, about these experiments that we do know in real life were conducted in space and were translated to patents for Tim Taylor. Patents which led to his own biotech firms that he did quite well with. This is the site that myself and Arthur Lee Starks visited after, with the help of some of my friends, which we'll talk about at a future date, pinpointed exactly where this location is, a site previously visited in the plains of St. Augustine by Robert Bigelow. Stanton Friedman, famous UFO researcher, rest in peace, who has passed away. The same Robert Bigelow who used to own Skinwalker Ranch, who went from motels to one of the biggest names in the aerospace industry for some reason, practically overnight, it seemed like. Was it because of things he discovered at UFO crash sites? Was it because of things he discovered at Skinwalker Ranch? You can find Art Campbell's book on Amazon. It's called Finding the UFO Crash at St. Augustine. And in it, you can see the meticulous findings that Art Campbell made in the desert. So part of me can't help but wonder, was this letter that he received meant to pull him off the track of legitimate findings in the plains of St. Augustine? Was it just a psyop to distract him? Was it meant to discredit Art Campbell's findings in the plains of St. Augustine by the fact that it could potentially make him look kind of crazy with this wild story about President Eisenhower and an agreement with alien races? I can't help but think about here how someone told us that a psyop is a truth between two lies. And I can't help but feel like here with this situation, there is some truth to this somewhere. All right, now let's get into our giveaway stuff. Remember, if you subscribe and comment on our videos, that will automatically enter you into our giveaways. We've got a lot of great stuff. Signed copies of Preparing to Survive in the Age of Collapse by Colonel Drew Miller, who was on All Things Unexplained. We've got a guest coming up on All Things Unexplained soon, author Bev Vincent, who is an author in the Stephen King multiverse. We've got a lot of signed swag from him, and he's going to be on the show real soon. We've got signed copies of Sharp Force by New York Times bestselling author, our friend, Patricia Cornwell. And if you haven't checked out Identity Unknown, remember, we're in it. All Things Unexplained is in Identity Unknown on page 164. Check it out. We're the favorite podcast of some of the main characters in the Scarpetta universe. We've got some great stuff from the Sasquatch Coffee Company to give away. Here I've got Howl in the Night Very Dark Roast. You would not believe how good this smells, and guess what? It tastes even better. And everybody that knows me knows I can't get by without coffee. It just ain't gonna happen. Remember, you can head to our YouTube store if you want to pick up a hat like I've got on. Lots of other great All Things Unexplained swag there. Make sure to check me out in episode 0 of Beast Games Season 1 on Amazon Prime, and episode 0 is on Mr. Beast YouTube channel. And you can check out our own Larry now. He is number 76 on Mr. Beast. New video. You can find the link to that in the show description. It's ages 0 to 100. Fight for $250,000. But things are starting to warm up outside now, finally. Maybe the deep chill is almost over. Spring is around the corner. So I want to encourage everybody to get off their screens for a little while this week. Take some time to get out into nature. Head out into the woods. Do some sky watching. You may not find a Bigfoot. You may not spot a UFO. But you might just find something even more important out there. And that's yourself. I'm Dr. Mounts on behalf of CJ and Smitty and Larry. This has been All Things Unexplained. Thanks, everybody.
I am here to discuss the so-called flying saucers.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched closely by intelligences greater than man's.
Did the CIA write Wind of Change by the Scorpions?
As humans busied themselves about the various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied.
Dr. Loeb, what percentage chance do you give it that you have indeed uncovered extraterrestrial or non-human technology?
With infinite complacence, people went about their affairs, yet across an immense ethereal gulf, intellects vast and unsympathetic drew their plans against us.
All of a sudden, a stick out of nowhere landed right in front of us, and there was no tree, nothing overhead. Something threw it at us.
Yeah. What's your hot take on Travis Taylor?
I've got an exclusive for you guys if you want it about the Alaska.
We do.
Okay.
Dr. Taylor was revealed to be the chief scientist of the UAP task force with the Pentagon.
All Things Unexplained.
So some of that, I think, sir, we'll save for closed session.